Good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? Thank you. Thanks very much. It's 10 o'clock and it's time to resume the inquiry into the appeal made by BDW Homes Northampton under Section 78 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 against the refusal of Fenland District Council to grant permission for a planning application comprising the erection of up to 200 dwellings, including affordable housing and self-built custom dwellings, 2.3 hectares of safeguarded land for primary education, public open space, landscaping, children's play area, sustainable drainage infrastructure, the formation of 2 vehicular accesses, and all other associated infrastructure. And it's an outline application with matters committed in respective access at land east of 61 March Road, Coates. This is the third day of what is forecast to be an 8-day inquiry. Usual reminders of mobile phones on silent or off, if they're not already, thanks. That applies to myself as well. Thank you. And we'll aim to break for lunch at around 1 o'clock and finish at 5 if possible, with suitable breaks in the mid-morning and mid-afternoon. So last week we sat for 2 days. We heard landscape evidence on the first day. On Wednesday, day 2 of the inquiry, I visited the site as part of the formal site visit. We followed the map which was set out in inquiry document 01, led by the appellant's landscape witness. I've now heard all landscape evidence. The site visit was without incident, apart from an exploding pen. So I should declare that I was given a pen by Councillor Wainwright on site, which was very kind. We were also visited on the site by a local resident, Hayley Randall, who tried to give representations. She was advised by the council that that wasn't possible and she should do that in person in the inquiry, if possible. She may not be able to make it. I did say that extraordinarily she would be able to put in something, a short written statement if she wanted to, and we would take that into account in the inquiry. We were also accompanied by councillors Ms Candlin from Fenland District Council and Councillor Wainwright from Whittlesea Town Council, as well as the council and appellant. Today we're going to deal with education evidence. Welcome to the education witnesses. Nice to see you, thank you. We have a few housekeeping matters to go through, as you might expect. Yesterday was a rather seismic day, today as well. With new housing delivery test figures in effect from today. First of all, though, housing land supply and NPPF issues aside, I have a few housekeeping matters. First of all, I was asked to add a couple of inquiry documents to the list. Those being two Gladman judgments, one from the Court of Appeal 2021, which is inquiry document 6, and one from the High Court 2020, which is inquiry document 7. There has also been some court documents added, and I had a query as to whether I had the most up-to-date version of the Section 106 agreement, which is the first week of August. Just let me double check the date. The 4th of August is the one I'm working from, so that's good. Thank you very much. Okay, before we get on to the exciting topics, are there any other housekeeping matters that I need to know about?
What you mean by exciting topics? You should also on Friday, I think, have received the proof from Mr. Davey for the authority on housing land supply and the proof for Mr. Tiley for the appellant on housing land supply. And I'm not quite sure when, but also a statement of common ground on that.
I have received all three, thank you. Have they been allocated core document numbers?
I haven't yet. I wasn't sure whether you want to add them as a inquiry document or a core document. So
Core documents, fine. We'll put them under the proofs. Thanks.
Okay.
Although I suspect that there may be further revisions. I'm going to ask both parties to address the inquiry with regard to the NPPF and the related figure of housing land supply and how you intend to pretend.
So thank you very much.
Proceed.
That's very helpful. I've had a word with Land Friend this morning. Obviously, the document came out yesterday. There's a number of points to cover, if I may, but I'll deal with the outliers first. So the first point is there are consequences, as you will see, for the approach to landscape and natural environment. And Land Friend has agreed to the approach in principle subject to your ruling. We think the best way, most efficient way, would be for the landscape witnesses to produce an update note, essentially indicating in respect of the relevant new policies how the existing evidence that you've heard slots into or doesn't against those. And that would avoid having to recall the witness to cover that. And then any outstanding matters we can pick up in the planning evidence.
Okay, will that be like a statement of common ground update?
More likely to be an addendum proof, I suspect, rather than trying to get heads together.
Okay, one from both parties. Is the council happy with that approach?
Yes,
Thank you. I won't be inviting rebuttals as we'll have the evidence in front of me and I'll consider both sides equally. What's the projected time frame for those notes?
We think the end of this week would be reasonable, sir, to do that. And I should make it clear that we're very anxious. This is not a matter of reopening the evidence that's been heard. It's a matter of applying it to the new policy wording in the NPPF. That's what I hope that's.
I share your anxiousness. Thank you.
That's one aspect to cover off. The second is, yes, the land supply position. The approach in particular to windfalls is something which will need to be taken into account. And it may be that there'll be a further update to the statement of common ground. The parties, unfortunately, can't meet until Monday next week. So that'll be the first time that can happen. But hopefully we can reach some accord, and it may be as a result of that the roundtable session is shorter than you perhaps otherwise would have anticipated. Then there's the more broader point of the approach to planning policy. Again, what I've discussed with my friend is that each of the planning witnesses would produce an addendum note for their proofs, again by the end of this week, and they will then speak to those because they're giving live evidence next week. And we think that's the most efficient way of dealing with that. The only other way of doing it, I think, which would be very unfortunate, would be to have their new views articulated for the first time orally in chief. And I don't think that would be helpful to either party.
I agree that addendum notes, addendum proofs would be the best way forward. Thank you. Is that something the council agrees with? Thanks very much. Could I just ask the parties if they have an idea of the scope of the revisions that are required in terms of housing land supply, just with a view to the preparation for the housing for the roundtable set?
As far as I'm aware, sir, I'm not being told the requirement changes or the sites which have been under discussion change as a result of the NPPF, because those are factual matters. And there has been some coming together on some of those sites. So the proofs are different from the position previously, and the statement of common ground hopefully identifies where the common and uncommon ground lies. It's more the specific point to do with how one does or doesn't treat windfalls. And that was anticipated in the appellant's proof. But of course, that was under the old NPPF. We now have the new NPPF, and so it needs to be reflected also by the council. So without going into the evidence now, that's, as I see it, the significant change post MPPF.
Thank you. And with regard to the planning addendum proofs and the speaking to those on Tuesday and Wednesday, do either side foresee any particular changes to the timings that you've given me already?
Not the timings. If we do the planning addendum by the end of this week, so close play on Friday, then I don't think the timings for the appearances of the witnesses change.
Yes, I think that's right, because I mean, a lot of what one would have anticipated discussing the old MPPF will still require discussion of the new MPPF, so I don't see any changes to substantive timings once those addendums are in place, and I think that will help to shape the scope of the discussions next Tuesday and Wednesday. But no, certainly at the moment, but should that change, I'm sure by my own friends and I will indicate that.
Great. Thank you for your cooperation in putting a program together. That's a lot less painful than I thought it was going to be. So thank you for that. Could I ask for updates at the start of each day, just to see where we are on the landscape note, the housing land supply discussions, and the planning update? Is there anything else before we turn to education?
Should just flag one point. So I know that the viability witnesses are speaking today, and just to pre-warn you, we're expecting then there to be a position statement that will come out as a result of those discussions.
Thank you. You mentioned today, Mr. Boyle, is that a change from the timetable?
No, it's what we anticipated at the start of the inquiry. Their opportunity to speak is this afternoon, and that's the 18th, as I informed the inquiry at the beginning, and that remains on track.
I think I'm working from a slightly different version of the timetable. The one that I have was the agreed one at the end of last week, which is today we're dealing with council viability evidence. Today County Council evidence for education in the morning from Ms. Pinion, Ms. Nola this afternoon, Mr. Newham tomorrow, and Mr. Evans tomorrow afternoon.
That's entirely in accordance with the version I have too, so forgive me if I wasn't clear. It's the discussion between the witnesses this afternoon out of the inquiry, and then they will appear as per your timetable tomorrow, Mr. Newham and Mr. Evans, as live witnesses. What I was just warning you again was that we're hopefully going to have a document that will come out this afternoon. That's what I was saying.
Thank you for clarifying. Mr. O'Reilly, anything from your side?
Say it again, sir.
Anything from your side?
No, sir, that's all entirely correct, as my own friend has said. So those discussions this afternoon are just outside of the inquiry to hopefully narrow, if any issues can be narrowed ahead of tomorrow.
Ms. Pinion.
Yes, can I call Miss Pinion, please?
Just take your time to get yourself comfortable and set up everything you need. If I can just ask the advocates in the meantime while Ms. Pinion's setting up, a reminder at the start of your examination, could you please give me a list of the documents? If I open them all beforehand, it'll save some time during your examination.
So for the benefit of Miss Pinion's evidence in chief, the only document that I believe you will need will be core document 14.08, which is the proof of evidence of Miss Pinion. We will refer in passing did a primary education impact and mitigation assessment, which is core document 1.24a, but I wasn't intending to take that document up. The proofs more than adequately set out what proposed mitigation was in that document.
I'll have it open just in case. Never know. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, Miss Pinion. Can I start by introducing you to the inquiry? And at section 1 of your proof, you set out your background, qualifications and experience. And your name is Rachel Pinion, and you are the Strategic Manager for Place Planning and Education Capital of Cambridgeshire County Council. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Yes.
And your qualifications and experience remain as set out in paragraphs 1.2 and 1.3 of your proof?
Yes.
Can I start, please, by taking you back to the question of the now withdrawn local plan? And as you discussed in your proof, there was a draft allocation in respect to this particular site, and that also involved a relocation of Coates Primary School. What was the response of the Cambridgeshire County Council with respect to education to that draft allocation?
And we responded with an objection. We put in that. Hold on, I'm just reading it through. So we said that the policy doesn't provide any certainty regarding the provision of a suitable alternative site, and also we've got concerns about the viability of the strategy.
And taking you now to the question of methodology, when one is approaching an application and Cambridgeshire County Council is asked to comment or dealing with an appeal, what is the strategy used by the County Council for deciding if a contribution is required?
Okay, so if we get a planning application come in, we will look at the capacity of the local schools, and by that I mean schools that are within the 2-mile walking distance of the development, and that's taken from the guidance for securing education contributions. And then we would also look at our forecast demand, and to do this we would use our catchment forecasts, and we would use the base forecast. Those don't include any parental preference trends or any housing development. We add the housing development using our general multipliers, which have been approved at committee, and then we compare the two, whether there's capacity compared with demand, to make a decision.
And in respect of what area, what group is used for planning purposes, the appellant's evidence says that Coates Primary School and then the 3 primary schools in Whitsley are grouped together into one group by the County Council. Is that correct?
Yes, we group those 4 schools for the reasons for our SCAP return. So that's a return that we have to do for the DFE on an annual basis. It does say in that guidance you don't have to use those planning areas to plan school places. So we take the approach that we work with our catchment areas of our primary schools, or in towns when there are schools that are closer than the 2-mile walking distance, we would look at kind of a local school area. So in this instance, we generally group the 3 Whittlesey schools together because the walking distance between the 3 is sensible, and then Coates we are looking at on its own.
And in respect of the current position to Coates Primary School, I understand from your proof evidence that it is the case that it can't be extended. What are the reasons for that?
Yeah, if you look at the appendix, which shows the kind of the site analysis, It's Appendix 1, so site information and
To your proof of evidence.
to my proof of evidence, an expansion potential. So the DFE published guidance around site areas and how large a school site should be for a certain number of children. And you can see on that appendix that we have the site for Coates is very small for the number of children that are already there. So if we tried to put any further buildings on there or expand it on site, we would be going against the DFE guidelines. And obviously we want our children to have sufficient play area, play space, playing fields, and that's the reason we keep those.
Now, in respect to the multipliers that you use for the calculation of pupil yields, I think that's set out in your paragraph 3.2, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
And what is the particular approach used in outline, in situations in which one has an outline scheme as opposed to a full scheme or a hybrid?
So when we get an outline application, we use our general multipliers, and those have been approved at committee. Our research team do a lot of work before that committee paper, looking at developments within Cambridgeshire and surrounding local authorities to assess the pupil yield. And we take that to committee, and that's approved by our members, and that becomes our established policy. Currently, for primary education, that's 30 to 40 children per 100 dwellings. So when an outline application comes in, generally you just have the number of dwellings. We don't know the number of bedrooms. We don't know whether it's social or market housing. So we use the upper end of our multiplier, so 40 children per 100 dwellings. And then when we, I know this wasn't part of your question, move on to the reserved matters stage, and we have more information around the housing type and also the build out of the development, we can look closer at the yield.
The appellant says that, well, the multipliers that you have used have resulted in a number of historic over forecasts by the County Council. What do you say in response to that?
Yeah, so in terms of the multipliers, the DFE guidance is clear that you should have a local authority multiplier that's been robustly informed, essentially. And I think if you look through the committee papers, you can see the process that we've worked through to get there. So we're following the DFE guidance. I think the other part is that the DFE multipliers for Fenland sit in the middle of our current range. And so if you're comparing them to kind of the national standards, they are similar. Obviously, forecasting is always a prediction, so we're never going to get it quite right, but we are content with the range that we're using.
And with respect to your evidence as to what is likely to flow from the impact of this development and other developments, that's at table 6 on page 11, is that correct?
One second. Yes, yeah.
And can you explain to the inspector what this table shows?
Yeah, definitely. So we're saying in the top row that the capacity of the current Coates Primary School has got 210 primary school places. Our catchment forecast for 29-30 is suggesting that there's 201 children living within Coates catchment. There are other committed housing developments within Coates' catchment, and they could generate up to 30 primary age children. Our multipliers are forecasting that the appellant's development will generate 80 children, so we would have a deficit of places if it were to come forward.
And in respect of the build-out trajectory, you addressed this at 8.2.4, but this is the appellant's point, well, not all these children are going to materialise at one specific moment. What's your response to that, and how does that matter for the purposes of planning?
Yeah, totally agreed. Obviously, at the time of the outline application, we didn't have a build-out trajectory from the developer, but in the appellant's proof of evidence, it was stated in there. So I then used that to kind of split it out over year groups, over years, so you can see that the forecast number of children will come over a period of time. But even so, for each individual year, there's still insufficient capacity to meet the needs of the development.
And in respect of mitigation, I referred earlier to the primary education impact and mitigation assessment that was submitted alongside the application, and I've made at that stage 2 suggestions about mitigation. I wanted to talk about each of those in turn. The first was a relocation and becoming a 2-form entry school. What is your response to that proposal?
Okay, so there's a few points there in terms of that we would be providing too much capacity for coats. We wouldn't need, with the new development, 420 primary school age places. So we'd be running a 2FE school with probably, when I say 2FE, that's 2 forms of entry in each year group, probably with only, I don't know, 40, 50 children in each year group, which wouldn't be sustainable. Generally, schools need at least 24, 25 children in a class in terms of their funding for a class teacher. So that's the first. We'll be oversupplying places, which would have implications. And then the second part around that is that the funding of moving the current school into the new building, there is no avenue for that apart from council borrowing. In terms of the DFE basic need funding is for new places, this would be replacement places. The current school is in a suitable condition as education. There would be no reason for us to move that school now. So the only reason we would be relocating that school would be to mitigate the demand of the development, essentially. So we didn't see that as a viable option, as the cost of that would fall to the county council.
Okay. I just want to drill down to that question of funding, because the appellant says, and you referred to the basic need grant funding, the appellant says, well, any shortfall could be made up by either other contributions or by state funding. But can you just explain to the Inspector what is available by way of state funding and how precisely is that to be put to use by the county council?
So I'm just trying to find the right part, 1 second. Okay, so in my proof, I talked a little bit about this in paragraph 5. So in 5.2, I think I looked over the projects that we've delivered previously, and between 2023 and 2026, we received 28.5 million in basic need funding from the DFE. At the same time, we used 84 million of borrowing to ensure that we could meet our sufficiency duties. So there's a definite difference between the amount of money that we receive from the DFE compared with the amount of money that we've needed to meet our statutory duties. If you look at the methodology for basic need grant funding, they've taken our SCAT forecasts and then they kind of aggregate those and look across them on a year group basis. And then if there's kind of not too much over, then they would zero. It's quite a complicated thing to explain, but then they zero the amount of funding that we're awarded. So generally the way it's set up, unless there's a really, really big deficit, the amount of basic need funding coming forward is not sufficient to meet the need.
So do you think that could make up a shortfall in construction costs?
No, I don't believe so. You can see, I'm just thinking where I put it, where I talked about the cost of a new 2FE school. Hold on, let me find it. Just repeat the question, Mark, sorry.
Yes, I said, do you think that funding could be used to make up a shortfall in construction costs?
So we put, I think, that a new 2FE primary school would be approximately £17 million. I think in the last 3 years, we've had an average of about £4 million from basic need funding. So we would be looking at at least 4 years of basic need grant and no other development anywhere else in Cambridgeshire to fund the school. So no, I don't think it would be possible.
And what about the county council's own financial resources?
I have referred to that because previously we have used council borrowing to fund these schemes, as I set out. I did say, the council has come to a financial position this year where we're in a revenue deficit, and we have been asked to look very, very carefully at our capital expenditure. So my professional opinion is that we won't be able to put together a business case which would support the amount of borrowing that's needed to provide a school that would be over the capacity that's needed.
The next particular suggestion was an infant or a junior school on the appeal side, which I understand would be an annex. What's your response to that proposal?
Okay, so we went back and talked about this because we couldn't find any clear Cambridgeshire policy about the provision of infant and junior. However, historically, we have always tried to move away from that model. Generally, it's more expensive revenue-wise. You have to have kind of a higher level of senior leadership, and generally end up having two head teachers rather than one with an infant junior, so it has impacts on the revenue. So we have across Cambridgeshire taken the approach of actually amalgamating our infant and junior schools to have, in cases where it's sensible, having primary schools as it is more efficient.
And the next proposal was to have a new one-form entry primary school on site, as opposed to having a two-form entry. What's your response to that proposal?
There's two parts to that one. So our forecast deficit is about 100 places. A one-form entry school would offer 210. So again, we would still be providing significant overcapacity. And then the second part is the DfE are clear about the minimum requirements for a new primary school to be 2 FE. And as in the appellant's rebuttal, it talks about how quite often actually the DfE has moved away from that guidance previously. If you look at that list for Cambridgeshire, there's one school on there which since 2016 is being proposed to be opened as a 1 FE, but that's with a potential to expand to 2, and we haven't actually opened it yet because we haven't actually had agreement from the DfE. So if it's under the minimum number of children, the DfE will often ask the county council to fund the revenue costs for those empty places. So it has a larger revenue impact on the county council too.
So if the position is, as you say it is, and there isn't going to be sufficient capacity within Coates, what is the likely outcome in respect to children on the appeal side who will need education?
So in terms of if the appeal was allowed and there would be the land and the contributions, is that what you mean?
Well, what I'm really asking about is what is the position with respect to Whitsley and any available capacity there?
So Whittlesea is outside of that 2 mile walking boundary for the development in Coates. So the council would be obligated to pay transport costs for those children. We had a plan for Whittlesea in terms of the amount of housing development that's kind of been permitted in the area, and we expanded New Road Primary School to a 2 FE school about 5 years ago, and that school is slowly building up to capacity in response to those developments. So there is some capacity at New Road at the moment, there's no denying that, so potentially we would transport the children there. Eventually, we expect New Road to be full from children from Whittlesea, so I would assume that we would transport to Peterborough and we would transport to March.
The appellant says that in the rebuttal proof, well, there's more than enough time for CCC to plan a mitigation strategy which allows it to meet its statutory obligations. What is your response to that particular point?
Well, the application was refused, so in our heads, there was no need, since refusal, we haven't really needed to plan for it. I think the other point is that we do, as a council, like to be kind of local plan led, looking forward to Fenland's kind of consultation in the winter, so we can work strategically as opposed to just responding to sites as they come forward. But I don't think any more time would have allowed us to make the site at Coates bigger. So I don't think that really would help us.
Your approach to the early years contribution is set out at paragraphs 8.1.1 to 8.1.5 for your proof of evidence. Is there anything else you want to say to the inspector on that point beyond what is set out?
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that the contributions, it seemed like we were asking for additional contributions for early years. That wasn't the intention of my proof. What I was trying to say there was if the primary school isn't delivered, then we would need to mitigate the early years places in another way. So this is the contributions that would be required to do that. DFE guidance is that every primary school now is built with a nursery. So we had planned into that cost for a primary school to have a 52-place nursery. So if that, because we don't think that's the right strategy, I felt I needed to make it clear. But so that those early years contributions aren't in addition, they are part of the cost of the primary school.
But if the primary school is not delivered,
Exactly.
it arises as an independent request. Is that the position?
Yeah. We would like to see a nursery.
With respect to secondary education, your proof addresses staff requests at 8.3.1 to 8.3.3. Is there anything in addition that you wanted to say to the inspector at this stage?
No, I don't think so. I think that's clear.
And finally, the SEND contribution, which is also addressed in your proof. Is there anything in addition that you want to say to the inspector at this stage?
Yeah. Just to be clear that it only became Cambridgeshire County policy in February 25 to ask for SEND contributions from sites under 1,000 dwellings, and that was based on the guidance from the DFE securing developer contributions, saying that we should be asking for SEND contributions. So that's why we took that paper to committee and had the multiplier updated, and have been seeking for SEND contributions for all sites above 10 dwellings from that point on.
Ms. Pinning, is there anything else you want to say to the inspector at this stage of your evidence?
No, thank you. No.
Well, thank you very much. If you stay where you are, my and friend will have some questions for you in cross-examination.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien-O'Reilly. Mr. Boyle, could I ask, would it be satisfactory to go for around half an hour or so, then a break?
By all means, so thank you very much. Ms. Pinion, good morning. Let me just start with getting the figures right, because what we just heard about what these requests are or are not. If I go to, sorry, forgive me, so I should have said, we'll need Ms. Pinion's proof and appendices and Mrs. Nola's proof and appendices and rebuttal. Those are the only documents we need.
Okay, one moment, Mr. Boyle. Thank you for those. Just to confirm, if anybody's at home opening their documents as well, I have the appendix proof of evidence and CD 1401. I have the, as before, Cambridgeshire's proof of evidence CD 1408. And for the rebuttal, I'm getting from a document number. If someone can jump in before me, that would be appreciated.
16.00.
That was 16.00. Thank you. Okay, nearly there, Mr. Boyle. Great. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Sorry, Ms. Pinion. I was actually in Ms. Nola's rebuttal document, which is, I'm now told, 16.00. Find that for me.
Where am I looking for?
And then within that, if you go to page 17, well, it's hard copy page 17, but find paragraph number 5.3.
Yeah.
Now, given what I think I've just heard from you in chief at the very end there, is it right to say primary is estimated as £42,000 per pupil, I'm round numbers, £42,000 per pupil, which would total for a 2FE 17.996 million.
So our total cost of a 2FE school, including a 52-place nursery, is 17.9 million.
Yeah, that's helpful. So I don't have a separate first bullet point of early years if the primary school comes forward.
Yes.
Yep. But I do have a freestanding secondary demand of 1.5 in round terms million. Yes. And again, an additional send provision of 116,000.
Yes.
So that's the figures the inspector needs to be looking at, which we'll return to in due course. That's very helpful. And if there weren't a new 2FE school, you'd be seeking a freestanding 26,000 for the nursery. Yes?
Yes.
You need to, because people are listening on the machine.
Fine.
You need to speak into the microphone so it gets picked up on the live stream. Well, that's a helpful starting point. Now, I don't mean to be unkind to you in the slightest, Miss Pinion. You appreciate the reason for refusal that the authority issued didn't cover the absence of a primary school solution. They've added that in subsequent through the statement of case. And it's to that point that the County Council was being invited to give evidence on essentially the lack of a solution of primary school.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to focus on, because matters such as, is the county going to get from this scheme secondary provision of 1.5 million, or send now of an extra 116 million, is the topics that we're going to be dealing with the next set of witnesses under viability.
Yes, correct. But as an education authority, we have to set out what we would require. Yes.
Get that in terms of your request, but
yes.
I'm not going to spend time in front of the inspector challenging on those matters when whether or not we can do it at all will be covered by 2 further witnesses tomorrow. Okay, just so you're aware of that. Similarly, you don't dispute, do you? You can't, that your authority is under a statutory duty under Section 14 of the Education Act, and you're not going to tell the inspector that you're not going to fulfil that duty, are you?
No.
No, good. Well, that's nice and clear, because that must be the county's position. And the position is, and I totally understand and have sympathy, insofar as I'm allowed to as a barrister, sympathy with the position you find yourselves in as a statutory provider, because you have constraints on your funding resources. Yep.
Yes.
And there is a long-standing expectation, you use those words in your evidence, that developments that generate need should make a due contribution to the funding of that need. Yeah?
That's correct, yeah.
Even though there's a statutory duty upon the provider to do its job, we have got into the habit of expecting the development industry to contribute as appropriate. Yes?
I don't think I'd agree with that. I think it's very clear that a developer should mitigate the demands of the development.
Well, that's really, we're on the same page. Yeah. Yes. I say that's notwithstanding the statutory duty placed on authorities such as yours, in this case for education. Now, that of course is, and you've seen it from the quoted passages in the evidence, that is subject to the scheme viably being able to make its due contribution.
Yes.
Yeah? And where it can't, there are other sources. Now, there might be grant funding, there might be borrowing, there might be sale of land, there might be all sorts of other ways of making efficiencies and so on and so forth. But that comes in then when the viability of a scheme is not able to carry. Let's give you an example, £17.996 million worth of new school, were that to be chosen as the correct solution. Yeah, you understand the principle how it works.
Yeah.
I know you've been in this kind of role for about 10 years, your proof tells me. Have you been working in Cambridgeshire in this kind of role for about 10 years?
I've been working for Cambridgeshire Council since 2016. Yes.
2016.
Yes.
So at least as far back as that, you'll remember how these things have operated. And with Cambridgeshire, of course, I'm assuming you've been involved with Fenland schemes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very helpful. You will be aware, the inspector will be aware, that the authority has had, I emphasise it, has had for some time a guidance document on contributions to affordable housing and other social contributions, which was part of the evidence base of the now withdrawn plan. And so formally it was withdrawn in October 24. Are you familiar with that?
As in the £2,000 per dwelling. Yes, that guidance. Yes.
20% affordable housing and
Yeah.
£2,000 per dwelling. And that ran, I'm told, from 2019 in Finland to October 2024, which meant that a developer didn't have to go through a formal viability appraisal assessment process, could bypass that by accepting the council's position, rule of thumb, 20%, 2,000 per dwelling. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've got some examples in your proof. There's a table at the back that talks about local examples of Whittlesea coming forward, and we can see what contribution they were made. But it's apparent, isn't it, that when you're talking of something in the order of £42,000 per pupil for a primary school place, £2,000 per dwelling for all 106 contributions, that's ambulance, NHS, libraries, anything else they might want to put in there, doesn't really touch your funding need, does it? Yeah?
Yeah.
And that has not had the consequence of the County Council failing to fulfil its Section 14 statutory duty, has it?
By using 80 million of council borrowing. Yes, that's correct.
Well, that, I'm afraid, isn't for me, you see. That's for your decision to how you go about doing it. But the point I'm putting to you is the historic position within Fenland, because of its viability, recognised by the council, its viability constraints, has been to only take £2,000 per dwelling for all 106 contributions, and then it gives a certain amount of that over to the Education Authority, but just look at the maths, nowhere near 42,000 per pupil for primary school education. Yep.
Correct. I would say, to point to the example of secondary in Wisbech, we were within a hair's breadth of failing on our statutory duty, in terms of, we had to work. It took an awful lot of work with the DFE about building a free school in Wisbech, as we didn't have enough contributions to build a new secondary school, and the decision for opening that school only happened in July to open in September. So if that hadn't have happened, I could sit here and say, no, we would have failed at that point.
Well, there is then a provision for making good any temporary failure, again, through the provision of appropriate funding. But let's not get into the details of what you have not done. You've not failed your Section 14 duty. And let's look at what the position is here. So if I go to the table that sits at the back of your proof, Appendix 2, now, you may not know the figures off the top of your head, or you may if you were involved in them, I don't know. But those instructing me have done a nice bit of digging on the Fenland portal. I'm going to pick up two examples with you. The one which is Dry Bread Road, so 250 Dry Bread Road, which is 175 dwellings. You see that one?
Yeah.
That's the second in the row. And you've got, now these are the numbers of expected pupils, aren't they? Early years, primary and secondary.
Yes.
Yeah, and in very broad terms, see if we can, if necessary, get this agreed outside the inquiry. My instructions are for early years you wanted about £360,000. For primary you wanted 1.27 million, and for secondary you wanted 1.11 million. You got, in broad terms, 1864 per plot.
Sorry, Mr. Ball, could I just ask where you're getting those figures from?
Yes, this comes from the Fenland planning portal. And I'm just hoping this witness is familiar enough to at least give the broad picture. So about 2,000, but it wasn't the full 2,000.
I'm very sorry to interrupt my learned friend, but this is not obviously in the four documents. I think it points to the planning portal, but the council had no anticipation this is going to be a point that's going to be discussed.
Can I put it another way in that case? Rather than getting to the specific figures, because they're all publicly available, we can agree them with the council. But just to speed matters on, let's do it this way, Miss Pinion. You did not get anything like your request at Dry Bread Road, did you?
No.
And the same can be said, obviously the pending one is pending, but your request to the council for education contribution for the Eastleigh Road Whittlesea, same pattern. You put in large figures, like the sort of figures we see here, and you get about 2,000 a plot.
We put in reasonable figures, yes.
But I'm not saying they're unreasonable, I'm just saying they're large compared with what you got, which was 2,000 per plot.
And that's our duty to do, is to show what's
That's very
required.
good.
Yes.
Because we can do the exercise as many times as we like, either within the 2019 to 2024 period where there was a piece of guidance, or for applications subsequent to that, such as this, where the viability assessment is required, and it comes up with a figure significantly less than your requested figures for education contribution. Yes?
Yeah, but as we said earlier, the viability part is outside my area of
I
expertise
get that,
in terms
totally.
of I'm just.
But that's the pattern which the inspector would see. Thank you very much. And again, we repeat, that hasn't led you, and won't lead you, to a failure under Section 14, will it?
In terms of the council's financial position, potentially at some point it might be that we are unable to meet our sufficiency duty in terms of, historically we've had more capacity to borrow than we do currently.
Now, then we turn to another aspect, if I may, please. I'm not going to tax you with the overestimate of children's spaces. You very fairly recognise that estimates can only be they're predictions. What we have in the detail of the evidence is, as it were, the proof of the pudding, because we've got the actual rolls year by year, which Miss Nola has compared with your predicted rolls. And of course, it's actual rolls who are the children that we're dealing with, rather than notional figures. But I just want to, let's assume that your education predictions are right, okay? That's the basis of these next few questions. I go to your Appendix 3. So we were on Appendix 2 a moment ago. Your Appendix 3, and this is for the Whittlesea primary schools. Yeah.
Yes.
And you said that you consider these together because they're all within walking distance of each other. So I can see Alderman Jacobs, New Road, Park Lane, and then there's a Totting Up.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Now, keep that table to hand, and at the same time, go please to Miss Nola's evidence, her proof, so that's CD 1401. Tell me when you're there.
Yes, I've got the proof, yes.
And if you go to page 18 of the hard copy, you'll find what are called heat maps.
Yes, got
You've
heat
got that?
maps, yeah.
And on the previous page, so page 17, you can see a table, I hope, underneath paragraph 410.
Yes.
And that divides the various schools up. So there's Coates, there's Alderman Jacobs, there's New Road, there's Park Lane. Yeah.
Yes.
And it says where is the main area that school is serving, and what are the other areas which are served. Yeah.
Yeah.
Based on the information as to from where children come.
Currently, while there's capacity and parental preference can play a part, yes.
But just to explore the point, we can see that Coates mainly serves Coates, but also serves Eastleigh, Turves, and is it Turves or Turves? Turves, and Whittlesea. Alderman Jacobs is in Whittlesea, but it also serves Eastleigh, Coates, and Turves. And then New Road, Whittlesea also serves Eastleigh, and Park Lane also says Ponders Bridge. Yep. And if we go into the maps then, we can see that being graphically shown. First one is Coates, and you can see the red dot where Whittlesea is. Then there's Alderman Jacobs, and you can see the extension out towards Coates. And then you've got New Road, and each one you've got Eastry there, and then Park Lane, which is more focused on Whittlesea itself. Yeah.
And these are based on current parental preference trends.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, in other words, when one looks, I'm sure we're not allowed to, but if one were to go into the school and say, right, where do you live, Johnny? This is the pattern that we get today. Yes?
Yes.
And what that shows, doesn't it, Miss Pinnion, is that although perfectly sensibly you might wish to plan your predictions on a catchment basis of 2 kilometres, in the real world, children don't always go to the school closest to them or within the 2 kilometres.
Within the 2 miles.
2
No,
miles,
that's
yeah.
correct. If there's capacity at school and a parent wishes to place their child at that school, they can make an application, and yes, that can be considered.
Thank you very
yeah.
much. That's helpful, because that is the real world situation. And more than that, children, as I think you've already recognised in your evidence in chief, don't all turn up day one, and they don't all turn up neatly in blocks of 30.
I
And
wish they did.
Exactly, they don't all turn up evenly spread across the various school year
Yeah.
places. Yes. So you then have the issue of children who have moved maybe just a mile down the road to a different house, and they're either already in a school or they have a sibling within a school, and all of that exercise. And that's where you get this kind of overlapping pattern of occupation compared with school. Yes, that's very helpful. Now, as a result, there can be a situation, can there not, that somebody who would have asked to go to a Coates school but lives in Whittlesea will be told, well, hang on a minute, we've got pressure on places in Coates, you can go to Alderman Jacobs.
Yes, but at the same point, if there was pressure on places in Coates, you could have a Coates family apply to Coates school and say, no, you're not able to come to Coates, you'll need to go to Alderman Jacobs, and then the council will be required to pay
Well,
the transport.
that could be the outcome, but it's not necessarily the outcome, is it? Because if the reason why that was about to happen was because a Whittlesea kid wanted to come to Coates, then it's perfectly within the authority, or maybe the school who makes a judgment, to say, no, I've got Coates applicants here. You go to Alderman Jacobs, you go to Park Lane, you go to New Road.
Yes,
Good.
yeah.
That's helpful. Now, let me help me see if you can help me with this. I had you have Appendix 3 open.
Of the appellant's proof.
Your appendix.
My appendix.
You have that?
Yes, I've got that, yes.
And the tots up, table 4 is totting up the previous tables, and then table 5 gives it in rounded figure, well, not rounded, but agglomerated figures. So Capacity School in total, 1470. First row of table 5.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we can see where that comes from. It's the bottom figure, well, it's the figure of total places in table 4.
Yes.
Yep. Base catchment forecast, pupil numbers, that's 1424, and we see where that comes from, the bottom table 4.
Yes.
Then new developments with permission, adding 188.
Yeah.
You do the maths and you get to minus 142.
Yes,
Yep.
correct.
For these
For the Whittlesea schools,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, I've got another figure as well from your evidence. If I go back to page 11, so don't lose that page. Page 11. We've got table 6, which is the Coates only position. Yeah?
Yes, correct, yes.
So it's Coates School 210 capacity,
Yeah.
catchment forecast 201, that would give you 8 surplus. Now, just pausing on that, as I understood it from your evidence in chief, the 201 is all the children expected to, so predicted to arise within the 2 mile catchment for that relevant date.
Within the Coates school catchment.
Coates school catchment.
Yes.
Thank you very much. It may be, as we just discussed, that some of those wouldn't actually ever want to go to Coates School because they want to go to, for
They
whatever
might choose a
reason,
different
one of the
school.
others.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we see the evidence of that. Similarly, the other committed developments, that's a 30. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Same point arises there. They might go or they might not, but there's the 30. That's where we're getting from. And then the same with the development 80, and that gives you a deficit of 101.
Yes, a forecast deficit.
Yeah, forecast deficit, assuming that they all go to their catchment school as opposed to one of the others within the heat maps we've just been looking at. Now, if I go back then to page 20 of your proof and table 5, the 101 for Coates, together with the 148 for Whittlesea, gives me 243, I think, if my maths is right, which it often isn't.
Yes, but you can use Coates, a solution in Coates, to mitigate the demand from these developments.
Well, this is
because then we would be liable to transport all of those children to Coates.
well, no, because you've already got a shortfall of 142, haven't you? On your table in Whittlesea.
Yes, a forecast, and we would
Yes.
monitor that each year, and we would only put the business case into our business plan when we were certain that new provision is required in Whittlesea, and we would plan on the basis of it being Whittlesea demand is mitigated within Whittlesea.
I understand that, Ms. Pinnion, and we've made comments about reliability of forecast and whether any of this actually happens in the real world. But on your figures, that's the basis of the questions I'm putting to you. On your figures, you've got a shortfall, predicted shortfall of 142 already.
Yes.
Yes, and within the same. I think the phrase we've used
Planning area.
well, planning area, but also mixed economy. I think was a phrase which Miss Nolan used within. Thank you, sir. Within the same real world group of interacting schools, the 142 plus the 101 from Coates gives you 243, which actually is there or thereabouts a one formentary school.
Yes, I agree with you that it is. However, parental preference means that a parent has chosen a school outside of their catchment area. They've made that distinct choice. They will be responsible for transporting their children to school and back. If their children want to attend out of school clubs or breakfast clubs, their parents will have to respond to that. If we are allocating them a school outside of the 2 mile walking distance, we will be liable for home to school transport. And also children won't be able to access all of those kind of other curriculum opportunities, because home to school transport gives you one route to school at the beginning of the day and one route home. So planning on a catchment area basis is so important for those individual children.
We can see already the sheer number of people not operating in the ideal world that you would like them to operate within the 2
kilometres. It is an
kilometres.
ideal world because those parents have got the choice at the moment.
Yes, precisely. And you're already trailing 142 against your predicted need. And then within Coates, and after all, this scheme's only 80, but you're trailing 101 with this scheme in the Coates catchment. Put the two together, you've got the need already for a one formentary school, haven't you, Miss Pinnion?
But you can't put the two together. I really disagree with that point, because you're automatically forcing families to go out of catchment, and it's not their choice to go out of catchment at that point. And generally, that will be families that make late applications, don't understand the system. So you're actually impacting on those disadvantaged families more than those parents that understand the admissions process and put their application in on time and are making a choice because of the schools in the area. So planning on a catchment area basis is so important in terms of the impact of the local families.
Don't dispute that at all, but you're not grappling with the point I'm putting to you. I'm not forcing someone to go to Whittlesea. I'm providing capacity in Whittlesea for the Whittlesea children. And that frees up capacity in Coates for the Coates children.
No, because if you look at the Coates catchment forecast, that is still very close to the school capacity. So I understand maybe some Coates families are choosing Whittlesea schools while there's capacity, but then those schools will fill, they'll be pushed back into Coates, and then the school currently will be able to meet the catchment need. Then you layer the development children on top, and then you're over the capacity, and it's the children on the edge of the catchment that will then be disadvantaged. Because the development's so close to the school, those children will have priority. It'll be the children round the edges that we're sending off to March, we're sending through to Whittlesea, into Peterborough, and it'll be those families that will suffer.
The figures we have gone through, the principle is simply this, isn't it? You will need to fulfill your Section 14 duties. You will need to find capacity one way or another. It's not for us to tell you which is the solution that can be done. What we are providing here, because we cannot provide the 17 million that we're after, what we're providing here is land. And that gives you an opportunity now or in the future to make use of it for education purposes, doesn't it?
But an empty piece of land doesn't help us mitigate the demand in this instance.
It can't be a harm to give you an opportunity, can it?
I think that's outside my area of expertise.
All right, Miss Pinning, you've been very helpful. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Is that all done?
No, stay there.
Stay there, okay.
I know it's not the most comfortable of seats, but if you just give me a moment to double check my questions.
Yeah.
I have some questions on methodology, just to help me understand when I'm going back through the figures that I don't miss anything.
Yeah.
The first one was on your proof question 3.2. Paragraph 3.2 of your proof, and that was based on the yields. And you did mention the time frame, but could you explain a little bit more to me about how those yields are applied across the lifetime of a school or the lifetime of a development? So when you forecast, for example, 20 to 30 children per 100 dwellings, presumably there's peaks and troughs in demand because of how families move in, children grow up, etc. How's that averaged across forecast generally?
So at the point of an outline application, we wouldn't have a housing trajectory. So it would just be, we just take the last year of our forecasts and then apply the multiplier onto that, thinking that planning, at this stage, it takes a while to get planning approval and then through into development and to start building. But then once we get the reserved matters application or the developer provides us with a trajectory, then we can map that on a year by year basis. And we kind of have a spreadsheet where you put in the number of houses, the different types of houses, and then it comes out and it will say the number of children that we're forecasting to turn up each year.
Thank you. My next question's on the shortfall in funding between what you ask for developers and what it costs to place a child. In what ways does Cambridge test its own requirements through SIL, etc.? How do they go through scrutiny, and how often are the funding forecasts updated?
So in terms of the cost of the build of the primary school, is that what you're referring to?
But also what you ask per student.
So the ask per student was the cost of the primary divided by the number of places, but including the nursery. So the way that we build our kind of primary costs, I think, first of all, we've delivered since January 2020, 27 major education projects. We've delivered 21 expansion projects, 1 new secondary, 2 special schools and 4 new primary schools. So we've got a fairly good basis in county of the cost of school delivery. We've also got 2 further projects on site, a primary and a secondary, and 1 in planning, and 1 that's to be submitted to planning imminently. So we use our kind of own knowledge of the cost of build of schools, but also we take the National Schools Delivery Cost Benchmarking Report. The latest one was issued in June 25, And this report publishes the results of a national benchmarking exercise, and it's based on the contributions from 164 local authorities and also from the DFE. And we then take the GIFA, so that's the gross internal floor area that we would require to build the school, and we use the rates from that report to build up the cost of the primary. Our cost in my proof was based on an outturn, so that's a completion of third quarter 29. We also add in the costs of sprinklers, as that's Cambridgeshire policy, and an additional SEND classroom in school, because that's also Cambridgeshire policy. And we add a slight location factor onto those rates from the benchmarking report as well. I did go back, because I don't personally do all that, I went back to my QS and asked him again, how does he feel about the cost that we provided? And he's kind of benchmarked that estimate against our current live primary project that we're delivering, and also our framework rates, and he was happy with the cost that he provided. So for each application that comes in, if there's a new school, our QS will build up kind of an estimate. So is that helpful?
Thanks. I think what I wanted to get at there was to ask you whether you consider that, based on the methods that you have to update, make sure that what you're asking from developers keeps abreast, and against the background of the shortfall of funding, is the methodology that Cambridgeshire uses fit for purpose?
Yes, yeah. And more so, I think the appellant used reference to the scorecard costs, and actually us using the benchmarking report, we think makes our costs more valid, because the scorecard costs and those rates have been derived from the 2018 capital spend survey, and then they've just uplifted them by TPI. They don't have any new projects since 2018. So we feel that's insufficient, because they haven't thought about operational carbon and embodied carbon, and they're also based on, they don't have any thing for risk and contingency in those costs, and also any abnormals. And our experience in Fenland is that you would require abnormal foundations, and that would be an additional cost. So yes, we do work really hard to keep our costs live.
Thank you. I think I've just got one more here somewhere. Okay, yes. Assuming in a scenario that the school, that the development goes ahead without any extra school places, so that the land's there, but not the school places. And what I've heard, based on the costs of providing a new school, is it preferable for the council to continue to pay transport costs as opposed to the cost of a new school?
I mean, transporting 5-year-olds
Against the background that you must provide it under your duty.
It would be cheaper, kind of in the short term, to provide those transport costs. Yeah, but it's not what we want to do.
Thank you. Mr. O'Brien O'Reilly.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. That's perfect timing for a break. So well deserved. Thank you. Let's have a 15-minute break. Back at 11:30. Apologies, it's the second time in a row I've jumped up when you've been in full flow to close the door, but I figured you were going to be distracted one way or the other.
That's very kind. So it's a very welcome machine. It does make a noise at odd times of the day. You're quite right.
I've got one more question for
Yes,
you
well-
as well. I had a question for you during your examination of the background figures which you acquired from Fenland Portal. Did you want to admit those? Or
I don't think we need to. I think we got the point across. There's been, as the witness recognised, and I'm sure Mr. Lee does too, historically an approach to 106 provision, and that was the £2,000 you'll be aware of, and that's significantly less than anything being asked for by the Education Authority, but nonetheless, that's the way it's been, and that approach has been continued subsequently in applications post the withdrawal of the guidance. With the same effect. Simple as that. If you'd like to see figures, we can produce with the council a list of historic and more recent decisions, what the request was for education and what the 106 provision was given to be. But I don't, unless.
could I just ask? I'll check with the council if that's something that they think might be helpful for me.
Yes, and I think in principle, any document like that is always going to be helpful to assist in, and we can make submissions as necessary. So I think a factually neutral and just a factual document that we can agree would perhaps be helpful, and I think the appellant will take the lead on that.
We can do that. Mr. Pritchard actually has already got a draft schedule, which is exactly that. It's just the factual figures that are put in. There's no commentary. If we show that to Mr. Lee and get that agreed, and we'll pop it in. But we don't need it for the purpose of the two witnesses we've got here. We can come back to it with the planning evidence.
Hello, Ms. Noller. Welcome to the inquiry. Are you ready? Thank you.
So the documents are the same as for Miss Pinion. So Miss Pinion's proof and appendix, which is CD 1408, I think, and Ms. Nola's proof, which is CD 1401, the appendix with it, and then the rebuttal, which is CD 16.00. So Ms. Nola, I'll introduce you from your main proof. You're Heather Catherine Nola, is that correct?
That's correct.
You say you're employed by Education Facilities Management Partnership as a consultant specialising in education and social infrastructure provision, BA Honours in Politics, Master's degree in Social Policy, Open University. You're a member of the Chartered Management Institute, is that correct? And then prior to working PFM, you were with local government in excess of 30 years in the areas of school planning and provision, assessment, negotiation of obligations, project and programme management, school building programmes. And then you set out some of the examples of your nature of your work in the rest of that section. Can I take you to the body of your proof? I won't ask you to read any passages from it, but just so we're all familiar with the, if I can describe it as the landscape here in education terms. So I go directly to section 4. It's headed local primary school provision. And it's primary school provision that we're going to focus on. There, you say at 4.2 that the Coates, Eastleigh, Whittlesea areas, there are 4 primary schools, and you illustrate those in the map at map 2, so we can pick up, we're now familiar with their names, Coates Primary School itself, Alderman Jacobs, Park Lane, and New Road. Yeah, and we'll see those names reappearing. And then over the page, you have table 1. And this is the data from January 2026, so January this year. And if we look now, NOR, you better help us with your coding. What is the column NOR indicating?
That means number on roll. That's the total number that each primary school has on roll in year R to year 6.
Thank you. And then CAP.
That's the capacity. That's the net capacity of each school, the physical net capacity.
Thank you very much. And so when we see NOR and then there's a total under the NOR and a surplus, what's that 209 indicate?
The 209 means that there are 209 pupils fewer on roll than the schools have combined capacity for.
Thank you very much. Now, why have you taken those 4 schools together?
I've taken those 4 schools together because they are part of the same planning group.
Thank you. Now, with that in mind, let's scoot on within the document, because you have the heat maps that we were looking at with Miss Pinion at your page 18. And then we'll look at some more figures. So map 3, map 4, map 5, map 6. Firstly, what are each of these indicating to us? And secondly, how are they produced?
I'll answer the second question first, if I may. They're produced by a group called Schools Guide, to which EFM has a subscription to, so they can publish these to us. They give, in answer to your first question, a guide to parents as to where the majority of pupils are actually coming from to attend the individual schools.
Thank you. And then there's, if we could see where the colours are, help us with the reds and yellows, greens, if it's not horribly obvious.
It's a bit of a target, if you like. The reds mean that is where the majority of pupils are being drawn from. Yellow is a cooler area, and green, a few pupils.
Thank you. There's then a set of figures which we find in your text, 413 on page 20 in my version. And there's a footnote 5, by reference to the way in which these figures are expressed. So you can just explain that for us.
Yes, these were figures that were provided to us by the County Council just under a year ago. Due to GDPR, the General Data Protection Act, they're not allowed to provide us with anything that might identify individual pupils. So it tends to be rounded up to 5. So over leaf, where we've got that little arrow, which means less than, it is due to the rounding of the pupil numbers.
Thank you. So if we just go to what the figures are showing us. We have the Coates map open. We can see 3 orange, red dots, red areas. Coates map 3. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if we look at your text at paragraph 4.13, you say that this is a September 25 FOI response, and that confirmed of the 203 on the roll at that point in Coates, 69 from the village itself, and then this is the expression: fewer than 38, fewer than 35, fewer than 142, fewer than 33, less than 53 elsewhere. Why is it you've had to express the numbers in that particular way?
Because of the rounding up, so that if there is 1 pupil, it can't be identified as a single pupil. It has to be identified as less than 5.
Thank you very much. Now, having recognised that, what is the picture that you draw from this information in terms of where the Coates Primary School children are coming from?
The majority are coming from within the catchment. So we have 69 from within the town of Coates itself.
I think
we're looking at table
preferred.
5 here on page 21.
Yeah.
Then we have up to 38 coming from Eastry. Eastry is partly in catchment, partly out of catchment from my reading of the catchment areas. And then from Turves, which is in catchment, there are up to 35 pupils.
Mm-hmm.
Could be lower.
Sorry, could you take me through that table a bit more slowly?
Sorry,
just so that I can
I do
understand it?
apologise.
Thanks.
It took a little while to compile, I have to admit. Let us take then the total roll of Coates Primary School, which is the dark figure at the top of the table. It shows that at that point, which was summer 2025, there were 203 pupils in school. And reading along, you can see that there are varying numbers of pupils, 28, 26, 29 in each of the different year groups. Of those 203 pupils, up to 142 came from the catchment, and up to 86 came from out of catchment. those two figures together provide a slightly higher figure than the 203 that are actually on roll. And that's the bottom line, the bottom figure where it says maximum total. And again, this is all due to the need to round up to shield the identity of individual pupils.
And when you say catchment there, how does that relate to Miss Pinion's 2 mile figure that she was talking about?
Most of these will be coming from within that 2 miles. The catchment is a very strange shape for this school, but I think from memory, and I haven't measured it recently, I don't think it's changed, the catchment provides for children to be within a 2 mile walking distance.
Thank you. Now that's all real world figures at the relevant dates. We look at 26 and summer 25. Yeah. Can we then move on to predictions? Now you have a number of criticisms of the way in which the predictions have historically been done. And perhaps the easiest way to pick that up was to go to your rebuttal, which is CD 16.00. And if I take you to table 1 within that, what have you done within table 1? So it's page 5, table 1.
So what I've done here is looked at the record of forecasting of the County Council since spring 2021. The forecasts are issued, or they're compiled by the County Council on a yearly basis for submission to the DFE. The first line gives you the date of the forecast. The second line provides you with the actual numbers on roll in the spring of each of those years. So in spring 2021, there was 1,368 pupils on roll. And you can see that has gradually risen. It's risen by just about 100 over those 6 years. Now, for each of the years except spring 2021, a forecast is provided there. It didn't happen in spring 2021, basically because of COVID, and the DFE didn't seek forecasts. If we look at the spring 2022 forecast, and it's read downwards, it started with a figure of 1,419 for the full catchment area. That's the 4 schools in Whittlesea and Coates. By 25-26, the County Council were forecasting that there were going to be 1,705 pupils. By spring 2026, if you read that line along, it's the dark blue line if you've got it in colour, you can see that actually only for 1,470 pupils had actually arisen. So it was an over forecast of 234 pupils.
Thank you. We're going to look at a moment in the tables in Miss Pinion's evidence, but just before we turn the figures up, what does that indicate to you in terms of the actual likely arisings on the evidence compared with the predicted arisings?
It's an over forecast, so I would take the forecasts with a degree of caution.
Thank you. And what does that have by way of implication for whether or not there would be a surplus of spaces or a deficit of spaces in any given future year?
It simply means that the forecasts are likely to be high and that the numbers of pupils forecast may not arise.
Thank you very much. Now, let's then take up Miss Pinion's evidence. And I want to go first of all to page 11, which has a table 6. Do you have that? Are you there, Ms. Naylor? Thank you, sir. Table 6, page 11. Now this is just Coates this time, and focusing just on the Coates school. There's a capacity of 210, And then there's a catchment forecast of 201. Just before we get into what you say about the 201 figure, what does the catchment forecast, as you understand it, embrace? What is it?
My understanding it's a base catchment forecast, and it may be for Ms. Pinion to respond to in more detail, but I take that as being the number of children actually resident within the catchment area of the appropriate age.
Thank you. So that's the arising, predicted arising, you say, with residents within the catchment. Yeah.
Yes.
We've seen from your heat maps, not all of the children who live in Coates choose to be schooled in Coates. So, quite apart from your points about predictions and the degree of caution to be applied, your view, please, on how one uses 201 compared with the 210.
It appears to me to be the figure that Cambridgeshire County Council are expecting to be living within the catchment of Coates Primary School at that point in time, regardless of whether they would choose to go to Coates or to some other school.
And if they chose to go to, let's say, Alderman Jacobs or New Road, what does that mean in terms of them taking up places at Coates Primary School?
They would not be taking places at Coates, and that would leave other places available.
Okay, thank you. Let's then look at the next row, which is other committed developments, and that's 30 arising at the given date. What do you understand that to embrace?
That's a committed development from, I assume, an approved development, one with permission, that is expected to yield 30 pupils. So it's probably somewhere in the region of 120 dwellings.
Thank you. And same point as the 201, you've got your prediction issue, but what about of the 30, a proportion choosing to be schooled not at Coates?
It could be a proportion. Again, it will depend on their individual circumstances, whether they already have a school place when they move in and perhaps don't want to yield that school place if they've moved locally. They may be seeking a place for a younger child or a child that's only just been born. So their family experiences will impact upon the number of places ultimately that are required to meet the needs of that development.
Thank you. Then the next row is the 80 from the development site. Now, I think you've agreed the 80 generation in your evidence from the development site, but in terms of, again, this point about parental choice and with whether they would all choose to be educated in Coates in any event, what do you say about that?
With the same basic answer, they may choose to go anywhere in the country. They are most likely to seek a local primary school. Whether that means Coates or somewhere else is difficult to know.
Thank you.
The proportions I'm not privy to at this stage.
Now, I don't think we've got equivalent numbers for the other schools in your text, but when we look to the heat maps we had before, Alderman Jacobs at map 4 appears to embrace Coates within its draw. I'll use that rather than catchment. Do you see that?
It does, yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So, taking these points all together, the reliability or otherwise, in your view, of assuming there's going to be a 101 deficit in Coates as at 2930.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Definitely.
Where are we?
You'd like to comment on the reliability or otherwise of assuming there's going to be a deficit of 101 as at 2930 in Coates?
On the basis of the accuracy of forecasting, I would say it's unlikely.
Thank you. Let's then look at the wider picture. Go now, please, to Appendix 3 of Ms. Pinion's evidence. Do you have that?
I do.
She's here looking at the Whittlesea primary school, so Alderman Jacob, New Road, Park Lane, and then aggregates them together, and Table 5 summarises the figures. And that gets to minus 142. Yeah.
Yes.
Again, in terms of predicting through to 2030, 2031, a shortfall of 142 places, how reliable do you consider that to be?
In simple number terms, it's mathematically correct. Given the historical forecasting, over forecast, I suspect not all that number will arise.
Okay. Now, you heard me ask questions of Ms. Pinion earlier, and I did on the basis that her figures, for the sake of argument, were correct. So after all, they're the ones that she's put in. Yes. Assuming for our purposes that the 142 is correct, and indeed the 101 is correct, what comment do you have about the predicted provision of primary school within the primary school planning area?
It would produce a total deficit of 243 pupils if they all came forward.
And what evidence have you seen of the county planning to deal with that deficit?
I've looked on the DFE website for proposed new schools and it's not there. I've checked with the Cambridgeshire County Council's school organisation plan and there's nothing mentioned there. So at the moment, I've found no evidence that they're actually planning to increase pupil numbers in that area.
Thank you. We've touched on the historic position for 106 contributions for development within Fenland. Is that a picture that you're familiar with in terms of the ask compared with the provision?
From time to time, yes.
And in this case, what is your view as to the likely funding of, it would be, you say, 243 shortfall from 106 provision alone?
It's not going to happen, essentially, from what I can see, from what I understand of the viability case. But
Thank you.
I think that is to be discussed separately.
Oh, for this site, certainly,
Yeah.
it's going to be discussed
Yeah.
tomorrow. Thank you very much. And where does that then leave an education authority with its duties under section 14?
The duties remain. They have the statutory duty, wherever the children come from, however they arrive in the area. They need to be found places within the county council's area, not necessarily within catchment, not necessarily within 2 miles. The statutory duty applies to the number of children within the education authority area and there being sufficient places for them in that area.
Thank you very much. Now, you'll be aware that part of the application is for reserved land for education purposes, which I think it's been specifically for the primary school. And we'll hear from other witnesses in terms of how that related to the draft allocation that was in the now withdrawn plan. Given the provision of land on this site, and given the offer of certainly a share of £2,000 per dwelling when it, through the 106, what do you suggest the rational approach of a statutory body under section 14 should be, given the figures they themselves are putting out in terms of predicted shortfall by 2030?
If we are using those figures, then I would be suggesting that the land is retained by the county council or accepted by the county council and a school of one size or another provided upon it.
Now, you say a school of one size or another. How would you go about sizing the school, at least initially?
You would use the forecasts to understand the likely outturn of pupils in the future, including those resident within the catchment areas and those arising from new development.
Thank you. And if we have the figures set out at the back of Miss Pinion's evidence for how much that might all cost, she gives a price for a 2-form entry.
One moment, Mr. Boyle, I'm sitting a bit closer to the door than you. It's a very long plane.
It's the MPPF being delivered to local planning authorities, I think.
Thank you.
Yes, forgive me. It's Appendix 4 of Miss Pinion's evidence. She gives a price for a two-form entry, 14 million, and then she adds various things to it, and then also does an uplift for quarter 29 costings. You'd say that school of one size or another. How would a one-form entry relate to these sort of figures?
It would be more than half because of needing to put in core facilities of certain sizes, halls and so forth. I'm not going to hazard a guess at actually how much it's going to cost, but it would be somewhere above a half and perhaps 2/3 of it.
So between half and two-thirds.
If you were to go for a one form of entry.
Thank you.
Um,
And
something
given
along
the
those lines.
plot of land available, can you say as to whether it would be possible to expand that subsequently to 1.5 form or 2 form in due
Very
course as
definitely.
need arose?
Very definitely, yes. The scale of 2.4 hectares will more than adequately provide for a 2-form entry school, plus nursery, plus centre classroom, should it need to.
Thank you. You've already commented that it's not going to happen under 106 contributions, figures of this nature that we're talking. From where would the Education Authority derive funds in order to fulfil its Section 14 duty, if that's the route it chose to go down?
Largely, from the forecasts, the funding source should be basic need. I think Ms Pinion has also indicated that borrowing is an avenue.
Thank you. Providing a school of whatever size they choose, it's their job to choose it, providing a school on the site would provide spaces for people within coats within the catchment that you
Yes, it would, yes.
necessarily. What about those who are in Whittlesea and who are currently choosing to come to Coates?
It would potentially become available for them. I think it's difficult to forecast exactly the choices parents will make, but clearly there is, as I've said before in my proof, quite a mixed economy of parents choosing one school in a catchment area that is not the one they're living in. It appears quite fluid, and that I would expect that to continue.
Thank you. And as we've touched on with others, not all the children arrive all on day one and they don't neatly fit into all the classes. We have some children, as we can see already, who are not from Coates in the Coates school. If there were to be reprovision or provision on the appeal site, what would you anticipate over time to happen with the Coates, non-Coates cohorts?
It would depend on the choices made. The children already in school would not be kicked out of school. Better make that clear. Once they've been offered a place, they retain that place for the duration of their school life in that school. It would provide some flexibility to enable some further choices to be made. We've got Park Lane, I think it is, New Road, that at the moment has 200 spare places, which Cambridgeshire anticipate filling up within the next 5 to 6 years. And then the further need for 240 places somewhere in the area.
Thank you. The time frame we're talking about here is in the order of 2029, 2030. The figures which we have in table 5 are actually 2030, 2031. Ms Pinion did touch on it in her evidence about how much time it's needed to get a school off the ground and whether she should have done it by now. Can you assist with the inspector as if the solution were to be providing on site with the land given? What sort of time frame would we be looking at?
I would normally expect about a 3-year time frame.
Yep.
It takes about a year to get it through the DFE's processes, and then there's planning on site.
Thank you. Should it be, we do have the directory, the build-out directory from the appellants, but should there be a mis-overlap, in other words, a gap before the new provision is provided, some children are appearing within Coates who don't have a space in the Coates primary school, or discussion we had about the reliability of those figures. And it was down to Miss Pinion to ferry some of the children to Coates,
Whittlesea.
to Whittlesea, forgive me. There is the provision of the £2,000 per dwelling plot in the 106. Can you assist with that, whether it be open to the authority, the education authority, to use some of that to fund the transport?
It's possible. It would depend how the 106 was worded, though. Any use of the money, obviously, it's a legal agreement and would need to be in accordance with the wording of the S106. But you do see it come up in S106s where an allowance has been included for children to be their travel to be paid to a school that's further than 2 miles.
And then once capacity had been created on the Peel site, would there be any further need to carry on paying?
For the children that were being transferred to schools in Whittlesea, the chances are they would choose to stay in Whittlesea because that's a school they're already in, so there may be some longer term implication while those children stay in the school.
This is primary, so how long is a child in primary school?
7 years.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else, Miss Noel, you would like to deal with at this point?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. Mr. O'Reilly, I present you with a choice of going through to lunch, pausing for lunch, or having lunch now.
My preference, if the witness came, my friend, would be to conclude this witness before the lunch adjournment. I don't think it's going to need us to take a lunch and come back afterwards. So I think that's the most pragmatic use of everyone's time. But if the witness objects, or my little friend would like some time now, I certainly don't violently object. But I think the most pragmatic use of time and give everyone more reading time for tomorrow is to continue with this witness now.
That's fine with me. Can I just have an indication from yourself as to your timing now?
Yes, I think about 25 minutes to half an hour.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
Yes, and in terms of documents we'll require, sir, and we'll require the appellant's education proof, the rebuttal proof, and then also Miss Pinion's proof on behalf of the local authority, all of which I think you ought to already have open. Good afternoon, Mr. Naylor. Can I just confirm, in respect of your capacity analysis that you carry out in your evidence, that's based, I understand it, on grouping the 4 schools together as one area, and that's what you refer to as the planning area, correct?
Correct.
And you understand from the evidence in chief of Miss Pinion that the county council plans with respect to capacity on a catchment area basis, correct?
Correct.
And we can agree, can't we, that there are good reasons for having a catchment area basis?
There are some good reasons, yes.
Well, let's explore some of those. One might be, for example, the question of sustainability when it comes to transport.
Correct.
It's obviously far better if children are able to walk or cycle to school rather than rely on private cars or on other fossil fuel reliant modes of transport, correct?
Correct.
And as well, in terms of creating communities and integrated communities, there's obviously a benefit to children attending school within the catchment area as opposed to a different location.
Indeed, yes.
And again, in respect of the work that you've undertaken, in respect of your, what I call your over-forecasting critique, again, what you've done in your evidence is you've applied that across the 4 schools, correct?
Yes, I'm not quite sure which. You might need to lead me to that within my proof or rebuttal if we want to look at it in any detail.
Yes, well, we'll pick up in a moment, but what I just want to understand is that I haven't missed anywhere in your evidence, for example, an over-forecasting critique which focuses only on Coates, correct?
I have not, but the reason for that is that the published forecasts deal with the planning area, not with individual schools.
And you relied on the Department of Education's figure of around 7.4%, correct?
Sorry, you're going to need to lead me to
We'll
that.
turn it up. It's your rebuttal proof, and paragraph 3.13, page 9.
Go there. Yes, certainly. What we've turned to there are the screenshots from the Department for Education scorecards, which indicate the forecasting accuracy of individual education authorities. For Cambridgeshire, for the primary schools, the 3-year forecasting over forecast is 7.3%.
And that's the, sorry, I interrupted you.
All I was going to say, it puts them in the top 25%, or that they are over forecasting more than 75% of other authorities in the country.
Yes, but that's against the Cambridgeshire area as a whole, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And again, what the inspector doesn't have from the appellant is a specific analysis of over forecasting critique based on the Coates primary school catchment area, correct?
It is not.
And if we could pick up Miss Pinion's proof, please, and turn to her 8.2.2. And that's where she sets out her analysis of the capacity and her predicted deficit of 101 in respect to the Coates primary school, correct?
Correct.
And what I want to understand from you, Mr. Naylor, is your evidence. You don't set out, do you, anywhere, a quantifiable analysis which suggests that there would be sufficient capacity at Coates primary school as opposed to within the 4 schools as a whole, correct?
Not entirely. Within my proof, we do look, I have looked at where the pupils are already coming from. And over time, if we go back, let's see if I can find it for you. If we go to my proof, page 21, table 5, which we looked at earlier, where it lays out very clearly that children are coming in from elsewhere, it is very clear that you can't rely wholly on an idea of who is living within a catchment to be sure that they are going to turn up in that school and want a place in that school. It is very clear from this data here. They may do. They may have very good reasons for wanting to attend school elsewhere. So for me, for looking at this, where the heat maps were also very clear that this planning area does work as a whole, but it's very difficult to disaggregate it. It is not entirely correct to assume that every child in the catchment will wish to go to the school that is their catchment school.
Let's undertake an analysis of what's happening at the moment. And as you say, the heat maps show what they show. But the point is that's the exercise of choice, isn't it?
It is, or it appears to be, yes.
Yes, well, there's no reason to suggest that at the moment there isn't capacity within the Coates primary school to accommodate these children.
No.
So it may be choice for good or bad reasons why you may want to go to a primary school elsewhere, correct?
Correct.
But if the result of permitting this appeal scheme is that there is insufficient capacity within Coates primary school and children have to travel to Whitsley to obtain a primary education, what that has done, Ms. Nenner, has removed choice from the system entirely, correct?
That will inevitably happen where you have full schools.
And in addition to removing choice, which I think we can all agree can sometimes be a positive, correct?
Sorry, say it again.
And choice can be a positive outcome
be,
for
yes.
parents and families.
Yes.
What it will also do is impose upon the education authority the transport costs of transporting the children to Whitsley schools, being as they are outside the 2-mile area, correct?
Only for those children who are not able to be contained within Coates and for whom a priority isn't granted through the pushback of applications from pupils from elsewhere. And we have already established that there are quite a few pupils that are coming in from other catchment areas that would not gain admission to the school in those circumstances.
I apologise entirely. So I should have said earlier, in addition to documents, that we're also going to require core document 13.45, which is the Department for Education's document. I think
Sorry, do say that again.
13.45 it's the Securing Developer Contributions for Education. It's a departmental document. I think, Mr. Nolan, this laptop beside you has them all.
Yeah, I've probably got a copy in my briefcase actually, which I might find slightly easier if I may. Thank you.
Yes, so this document is a Securing Developer Contributions for Education, and it's a document produced by the Department for Education, correct?
Correct.
And a particular paragraph I wanted to start with was paragraph 44, which is page 18.
I don't have a 44.
What's it, Ms. Neville?
I don't have page 44. Is it
No,
paragraph?
it's paragraph
Paragraph
44,
44,
page 18, Ms. Nola.
Page 18. Thank you.
Apologies. And again, that picks up on the point we made earlier, which again is that requiring children to travel requires either public investment or else which reduces results in a cost burden, but also results in lasting harm to environmental and public health, correct?
Correct.
And in respect of the question for the inspector about whether or not that's a feasible option, again, that is the question about whether or not the authority has a financial headwind to be able to do that, correct?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Well, when asking whether or not that's a viable option, the inspector has to have regard to the authority's financial position, correct?
Correct.
Now, I want to turn to the question of the construction of a new school as an option, and starting with the two-form entry school. We can agree, can't we, that there are disadvantages to having an overcapacity in terms of provision?
Definitely.
And in addition to that, there's also an any reading a funding shortfall between what the appellant is going to be able to provide and what the construction is going to cost, correct?
That is correct. That is largely, though, because it would not be still compliant to seek more than the cost of the pupils arising.
Well, we'll deal with viability tomorrow, but that's entirely the point.
No.
The correct is you can't ask for funding for those extra places, can you?
No,
You can only
you cannot.
ask. Yes, you can only ask for the need that's actually produced by the development.
That's right.
And let's cross off the costs before we come back to funding. But I think it's entirely fair to say, based on your evidence in chief, that it's still a shortfall, even if it's a one-form entry, because you fairly said the construction costs are going to be at least more than half because of the infrastructure requirements,
Yes.
and so on. Starting with returning to core document 13.45, and if we look at paragraph 13, so this is the education contributions document. And it's the question of basic need capital allowance and other Department for Education capital funding. And what it says is that what they can be used for new school places that are required due to housing development, correct?
Sorry, is this paragraph 13?
Paragraph 13 at the bottom of page 9.
I've got it, it's basic need capital allocations.
Yes, and as a Department for Education capital funding for the high needs provision capital allocations can be used for new school places that are required due to housing development. And the point I'm putting to you is that's the same point as you just made, which is that it wouldn't be still compliant to require, for example, contributions with respect to places that weren't generated as a result of need from the development.
That's correct, yes.
Correct, yes. And what I want to understand is, in respect of basic need funding, is it your position that that could meet the shortfall for constructing a new school, even where there wouldn't be a demand for those places at an early point?
I think it depends how it's constructed, when it's constructed, and whether you've got other issues going on with that school. I've seen a wide range of primary school costs. A lot of them considerably lower than Cambridge, some higher. So it's difficult to make an overall assumption that a school is going to cost a certain amount in those specific terms.
Well, let's unpack it. So a two-form entry, there's some disagreement between us on costs, but it's a significant sum, correct?
A significant sum.
And if you're creating a capacity for a two-form entry on anybody's reading, that's more than the amount of pupils for which there would be a need when it's first opened, correct?
Yes.
So at least some of the construction costs are going to be attributable to places that are not required at the moment, correct?
That's the normal way, yes.
Yes. And what I want to understand is what government funding steps in and pays for places that are not yet required.
If we're talking about a 1FE and we're looking at the overall position within Coates and Whittlesea, which I think we were covered earlier, there is the need on the Cambridgeshire figures for a 1FE primary school. So the basic need alongside the development contributions should cover that.
What about two-form entry?
It wouldn't cover that. It would not need to because it's not necessary.
Yes, and respect to... Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that was
And in respect to the one-form entry, your position that is a need which would fill that is based on the planning area as a whole rather than the Coates catchment area, correct?
Correct, because it would not make financial sense to build a school for 147 pupils in Whittlesea and 101 in Coates. A pragmatic position at some stage has to be considered as to where the places are to be addressed to, at what time and at what scale.
That concludes the questions I have for you, Mr. Niddler. It's been very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think that was a bit quicker than 25 minutes.
Well, it was very helpful and informative, so we made much more progress.
Thank you. I only see one person in the gallery, but I do need to ask if there's anyone here who objects to the development who wants to put questions to the witness. Then now would be your chance to do so. Thank you. I do have some questions, just to get clarification, really. And a question, well, having said that, a question to help with my own understanding, background knowledge, I suppose. Talking about over forecasts and Cambridgeshire's position in terms of other authorities. First of all, what are the sort of factors that in this case lead to an over forecast? Why would an over forecast occur generally?
There can be a number of reasons. And again, I don't know exactly how Cambridgeshire conduct their calculations. So in some ways, this might be a bit of a hazard of a guess. But if the figure of 0.4 pupils per dwelling is employed, that will, I think, produce an over forecast because it's at the very top of the range and doesn't allow for a true average. Other things may include not...
Sorry to interrupt you, just before you go on, before I forget that point, what's the general range there?
It's contained within Ms. Pinion's proof fairly early on. It's on page 3, paragraph 3.2, and for primary education they use a range of 30 to 40 children per 100 dwellings, so that's 0.3 to 0.4 when they're considering the product from housing development.
Thank you.
Other issues may be that fewer children simply turn up or more move out. It may be an impact of people not sending their children to a state school and choosing independent or homeschooling, or it may be an increase in special education needs pupils being diagnosed to go to a particular special school. So it's a whole range of potential causes.
Thank you. Do you consider that, given the background situation within the council and the evidence that I've heard, that Cambridgeshire is providing the best forecasts that they can?
I'm not convinced that they are, actually.
Is that a result of its position in terms of the top sort of quarter of over forecasting authorities in the country?
That top quarter is a result of their over forecasting. It's not the cause of it. The cause is underlying demographic situation, I suspect.
How do you think it could be improved? How long is a piece of string? I know. Would you like a job?
I suspect it perhaps just needs to be a little more reflective of what is actually arising. And indeed, I think in my proof, is it my proof or my rebuttal? I have indicated, I've provided somewhere, I'm sorry, my rebuttal, page 12. There is a graph on there. There is a graph there, graph 1, page 12 of my rebuttal, which indicates that the ONS projections, population projections for Fenland, are in something of a decline, and I would normally expect those to be factored in some way or another. That's the lowering of birth rates and so forth that are currently appearing.
And I asked you that mostly because I know that you work obviously with a lot of authorities and you have a lot of experience, and you can bring in through your evidence and compare it with Cambridgeshire's position. In terms of benchmarking against those other authorities, what does Cambridgeshire do differently that they shouldn't be doing?
That I can't say because I don't know how they're pulling their forecasts together.
I understand, thank you. And there was one more thing. I just want you to repeat for me, because I didn't get my answer down in whole, was where would Cambridgeshire's funding come from if it can't get it through Section 106 monies? And you said borrowing and something else I didn't get.
Basic need grant funding.
Basic, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. O'Brien O'Reilly. That was the dulcet tones. They've wanted to hear more. Mr. Boyle, thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't have any re-examination from Lone Friends questions, but may be able to assist you in the theme that you're taking up with the witness just now. If I took you, Miss Naylor, to Miss Pinion's evidence, we know, because you've done the exercise, that there has been over forecasting, because we've seen what the actual roles are. It's in your proof. But just in terms of how they go about it, her proof at 3.2, I'm only looking at the primary education, says that for Coates, they would expect 30 to 40 per 100. That's the figure you gave the inspector a moment ago for primary, per 100 dwellings. If you turn the page, you can see at paragraph 3.6, the council always uses the higher end to ensure that sufficient places can be planned for. Yeah? Just above that, she does note that the Department of Education 3.5, it would suggest that for Fenland it's 35, so that's 0.35 rather than 0.4. If you use 0.4, and sorry, this is just a pure point of maths, if you use 0.4 rather than 0.35, what are you going to get? A higher figure or a lower figure?
No, a higher figure if you use 0.4.
And then let's see what that's applied to, because at paragraph 3.4, it explains in response to your criticism of forecasts that what it does is it looks to housing developments that have approved permission or have been submitted for consideration. I'm not sure what that means. The county does rely on information provided by housing developers, which informs the district council's housing trajectories. And then when housing build-out is slower than forecast, that can lead to over-forecast pupil numbers. Yes? Now, this is not at all within your bailiwick, but you may be aware that the ability of the authority to meet its housing trajectories is a matter in dispute in this case. If the authority projected X, but it delivered Y and Y was lower, and then was applying an over-emphasized 0.4 rather than 0.35, what's that going to do with the projected forecast?
Goodness. That's quite a difficult one to answer, actually, because it depends on the quantities.
I don't want a figure from you, of course.
Yeah.
But where will the forecast tend to be, or trend to be, if you over-egg the number of houses and you over-egg the percentage multiplier?
It would be much higher than it needed to be.
Thank you very much indeed. I think that was the only points, I think.
Great, thank you, Ms. Noller. That's, you can stand down.
Thank you, sir.
Could I thank both the witnesses and the and the advocates today for making a technical subject easy to understand, from my point of view anyway. The evidence was very clear and so was the questioning, so thank you for that. One question from me, something I didn't ask this morning. It was mentioned last week that there was an updated schedule of conditions being looked at the moment. When could I see that, please?
I popped it through to Laurie on, was it Thursday, Wednesday? Yeah, so we popped it through to Laurie, but we're working on it as a sort of live document, so I hope to look at it later today, pass it back through to the council, and then send the final version ahead of the session on Thursday.
Good, thank you. For a so-called independent inspector, I get far too many emails, so I'll go through those. Thank you. I think that's all I have. Anything from the parties? Great. Well, we've got a bonus half day, so I hope you use it wisely. Thank you very much. We start again tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Is there a necessity for an earlier start? I think I know the answer.
I think possibly the other way around. I say we're expecting the discussions this afternoon on viability to produce a note. You'll need time just to see that. If it's done within sensible time today, we'll send it through to the Inspectorate so that you can see it overnight. But if not, we'll give it to you as soon as we can in the morning. And you may just want to run your eye through that before we start.
Thank you. What I will do is open the inquiry at 10 o'clock, and if there needs to be an adjournment, we can discuss that as well. Good. Right then. Thanks very much, everybody. Back tomorrow at 10 o'clock, and the inquiry is adjourned.